Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We love to really get into the details here, and today we're tackling manufacturing contracts.
Ooh, yeah.
Your secret weapon for making sourcing smoother,
Absolutely.
and especially from a place like Vietnam, known for its manufacturing prowess.
It's a powerhouse.
You guys sent over some articles and notes, listeners,
Bunch of questions.
and we're going to unpack all of that.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
First things first. Why even bother with contracts?
Mm.
There's for overseas manufacturing.
Right.
Is a handshake not enough these days?
A handshake might cut it for like smaller local stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with international manufacturing, there's way more on the line. Different legal systems, different time zones, sometimes even language barriers.
Right.
A contract minimizes that risk by putting everything down in black and white,
Yeah.
responsibilities, expectations, all of that.
Yeah, it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see here one of the sources talks about peace of mind being like a major benefit of having a good contract.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's not just about dodging problems. It's about knowing what to do when those problems inevitably pop up. Like having a roadmap for resolving disagreements before they, become major blowouts.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So let's make this real.
Okay.
Let's say I'm sourcing bamboo chopsticks.
Mm-hmm.
Those are trendy.
They are.
How would a contract prevent things from going sideways?
Well, imagine you didn't specify like the exact sizes you wanted or, what kind of finish those chopsticks should have.
Okay.
You might get a shipment that's totally not what you had in mind.
So that'd be bad.
Yeah. And then you're stuck.
Yeah.
A good contract lays all that out, no room for guesswork.
So it's all about being super specific, right?
Yeah, like instead of just saying bamboo chopsticks, you're talking about, what kind of bamboo, the length, the diameter, even like, are they tapered or not?
Wow, okay.
The finish, all of that spelled out.
That level of detail, then, that minimizes those errors, those delays, those costly disputes.
Totally. It protects you and the supplier.
Okay, sold. Contracts are a must-have. Now let's break down what goes into one. The source mentions 8 key elements.
Yeah, the building blocks.
Okay, let's start with the first one. Product specifications.
Mm-hmm.
It seems kind of self-explanatory, but I'm guessing there's more to it,
There's always more to it.
right?
This is the heart of your contract. It defines exactly what you're getting. Remember those chopsticks?
Yeah.
This is where you get granular. The type of bamboo, the dimensions, like we said, even stuff like engravings.
So we're going way beyond just a basic description.
Way beyond.
We're eliminating any chance of, misinterpretation.
Exactly. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't just tell the contractor, I want a house. You'd have blueprints, right?
Yeah.
This is like the blueprint for your product.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture.
Good.
What's next?
Pricing and payment terms. This is where things can get a little messy.
Oh, yeah, the money stuff.
Yeah, we're talking unit price, payment schedule, currency, all the fun stuff.
And I bet there's some hidden costs lurking in there, too.
Oh, for sure. Things like shipping, customs duties, any other fees.
Yeah.
You gotta be super clear on who pays for what, avoids those awkward conversations later.
Yeah, nobody wants to deal with that.
Nope. So yeah, the contract makes sure everyone's on the same page about the money right from the start.
Love it.
All right, so we got the product specs, the money stuff sorted. What about the timing?
Right, that's our third element, lead time and delivery schedules. International shipping can be a bit of a maze, so clear deadlines are crucial.
Yeah, for those chopsticks, we'd be talking about how long the supplier has to make them and how long to ship them to us, right?
Exactly. Factor in things like customs and, any potential hiccups along the way.
Got to account for those container ships getting stuck in the
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Suez Canal again.
Happens all the time.
So having those dates clearly laid out, that keeps everyone accountable and helps us, manage our own timelines. Exactly. And you can manage customer expectations, too.
Right. Nobody wants to overpromise and underdeliver.
Especially not in this business.
Okay, so far we've got the product, the price, and the timing.
We're on a roll.
What else? What's next?
Quality control and assurance. This is how we make sure those chopsticks aren't falling apart after the first use.
All right, now we're talking. So this section, this is where we outline things like acceptable tolerances for variations, inspection methods.
All of that.
Maybe even bringing in a third party to inspect if we're feeling extra cautious.
Yep, you got it. Setting those quality standards and making sure the supplier meets them.
Makes sense, especially if, I'm trying to build a brand.
Huge for your brand reputation.
Don't want my product to be known for, shoddy quality.
Exactly. This part of the contract helps protect that.
Quality control. Check. What's next?
Now we're getting to the good stuff. Intellectual property protection.
Ooh.
Yeah. Especially important if you have a unique product.
Right, got that awesome chopstick design. Don't want anyone running off with it.
That's what this is for. Vietnam's a manufacturing hub, so protecting your IP is key.
Yeah.
This part of the contract says who owns the design, prevents the supplier from using it for anything other than your order.
Okay, makes sense. Now, nobody likes to think about things going wrong, but
you got to be prepared.
you got to be prepared, which brings us to...
Dispute resolution, the safety valve in your contract.
Okay, so let's say there's a disagreement about the quality of the chopsticks or, a payment issue or something.
This is where you lay out how you'll handle it.
So we're talking like mediation, arbitration, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. You can even specify which country's laws apply where any legal stuff would happen.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've heard horror stories about those international legal battles.
Yeah, best to avoid those.
Avoid at all costs.
This helps.
Okay, good to know. We've covered a lot. What's next?
Shipping and risk transfer. This one can get a little technical, but it's basically about who's responsible for the goods at each step of the shipping process.
Okay. Break it down for me.
Like who pays for the shipping, who handles insurance, what happens if, let's say, those chopsticks go overboard during a typhoon,
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, those things happen.
Okay.
And this is where Incoterms come in.
Incoterms.
They're these internationally recognized terms that define all these responsibilities. You got to specify which Incoterm applies to your shipment.
Sounds like I need to brush up on my Incoterms.
Maybe a little.
Okay. Last but not least.
Compliance with laws and regulations. This one makes sure you and your supplier are doing things by the book, ethically and legally.
So we're talking like import-export regulations, labor laws, environmental standards, all that.
All that good stuff, yeah. Especially important when sourcing from Vietnam, make sure you're aligned with international standards, and your own company ethics, of course.
Right, that makes sure those chopsticks are made responsibly.
Exactly. It's about doing business the right way, building a sustainable, ethical supply chain.
Awesome. Okay, I think we hit all 8 elements there.
We did it.
Shoo, I feel like I just got a crash course in contract law.
Haha, just a little taste.
So what else is in store for part 2 of this deep dive?
Well, now that we have the basics, we're going to really unpack each of those elements, real-world scenarios, actionable tips, all that.
Sounds good. I'm ready for those pro-level insights.
They got it.
All right. Join us for part 2, everyone. We'll dive even deeper into this world of manufacturing contracts.
Can't wait.
See you then.
See ya.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We laid a lot of groundwork in the last part.
We did.
But I'm ready to really dive into the details.
Me too. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with those product specifications.
Okay.
How detailed do we actually need to get?
Well, it depends on the product.
Right.
But remember, clarity is key.
Yeah.
Let's stick with those bamboo chopsticks, right?
Okay.
If you're going for, like, a premium feel,
Yeah.
you might specify the exact type of bamboo, like Moso bamboo. It's known for its strength and that smooth finish.
So we're talking about, like, being specific about the material.
Mm-hmm.
What about dimensions? How much detail is enough?
So instead of just saying, the length and diameter,
Yeah.
you could get into, like, a gradual taper from, say, 7 millimeters at the top to 5 millimeters at the base.
Ooh, fancy.
That ensures a comfortable grip, adds to that premium feel.
Right, so we're thinking about function and aesthetics.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the finish?
You could say, like, a natural oil finish for a more eco-friendly look.
Okay.
Or a food-grade lacquer for durability and shine. It all depends on your vision for the product.
Right, and the target market.
Of course.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if it's, something more complex like clothing?
Oh, yeah, those get super detailed.
I bet.
Let's say you're sourcing that linen shirt, for example.
Okay.
The fabric composition, that's crucial.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying linen, you might specify a blend, like 70% European flax linen and 30% organic cotton.
Oh, wow, so specific.
It gives a softer drape, more sustainable.
Right, and I know that's like a big thing for consumers these days.
Huge.
Okay, and for a shirt, the measurements for each size.
Oh, yeah. Gotta be precise.
I bet every little detail.
Sleeve length, bust, waist, even the neckline. Gotta nail it.
And color, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially for fashion.
Yeah.
That's where those Pantone color codes come in handy.
Oh, yeah, those little books.
They're like a universal language for color.
I've seen them. It's like every shade imaginable.
What lush.
But what if it's not, like a specific Pantone shade?
Then you gotta get descriptive.
Okay.
You can provide fabric swatches or just really detailed descriptions.
Like what? Give me an example.
You could say something like, a deep indigo blue with a slight red undertone.
Ooh, getting poetic with it.
Sometimes you gotta...
Okay, product specifications. We got that down. Let's move on to pricing and payment terms. What are some common traps people fall into here?
One big one is not being specific enough about those payment milestones.
Okay.
Like instead of just saying 50% upfront, you should say something like 50% of the total contract value is due upon signing of this agreement.
Okay, so it's like no room for misinterpretation.
Exactly.
What else should we be mindful of?
Be super clear about the currency you're using.
Right, like, are we talking US dollars, euros, Vietnamese dong?
And who's responsible for those currency exchange fees? You know, those can add up.
Yeah, and what about if the exchange rate fluctuates?
You'd address that too.
Okay, so we're talking about avoiding those, like financial surprises?
Yep, nobody wants those.
And I see here that the source mentions something about price adjustments.
Right, so imagine the price of, flax for that linen shirt suddenly spikes.
Oh, yeah.
Because of a shortage or something.
Yeah.
A price adjustment clause lets you renegotiate the price.
So it protects both sides from those, like, unexpected market changes.
Exactly, builds in some flexibility.
Okay, makes sense. What about lead time and delivery schedules? Any tips for navigating those timelines?
Be realistic. For one,
Okay.
don't rush the process. It can really hurt the quality.
Yeah, that's never good.
And factor in potential delays, like with customs or unexpected production issues.
So it's better to, like, add a little cushion to the schedule
Always a good idea.
rather than, scrambling at the last minute.
Nobody wants that stress.
And it's probably good to break down the process into, like, milestones.
That's a great tip.
Okay.
You could have a deadline for, like, sourcing the fabric, then pattern making, then sample production, and finally bulk manufacturing.
Okay, so it's like smaller chunks, easier to manage.
Easier to track. Keeps everyone on track.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Now let's talk quality control and assurance. How do we ensure the quality is top-notch, especially when we're sourcing overseas?
This is all about those tolerances, remember?
Yeah.
For the chopsticks, you might say plus or minus 1 millimeter in length. You'd also outline how you're going to inspect for, like, straightness, smoothness, any defects.
So we're setting the standard.
And making sure they're met.
But how do we know the inspections are actually happening?
You can require proof, like photos or videos.
Oh, smart.
And if you want even more peace of mind, bring in a third-party inspector.
Yeah, I've heard that can be really valuable.
It is, especially for bigger orders or, complex products.
It's like having an extra set of eyes.
Exactly. Catches those costly mistakes early on.
Now, on to something I'm really curious about. Intellectual property protection.
Ah, yes, protecting those designs.
But how do we actually do that? Like, legally speaking?
This part of the contract usually has clauses that give you exclusive rights to your designs, trademarks, all that.
So for those chopsticks, we're talking about, like, the overall design, any engravings, the logo, the brand name.
Exactly. And it would say that the supplier can't use those designs for anything else or, sell them to your competitors.
Okay, it's like putting up a legal wall around our IP.
A good way to think about it.
Now, I know this one isn't the most fun to talk about, but dispute resolution is something we got to cover.
Got to be prepared.
Yeah. So what are the key things here?
You want to have a clear process for, resolving disagreements.
Right.
So you got to specify how you'll do that. Mediation, arbitration, all that.
And if all else fails, there's litigation.
Right. Yeah, but that's usually the last resort. Can get expensive and messy.
And I bet especially messy if it's international.
Definitely.
So yeah, best to try and avoid that.
For sure.
And we also got to figure out which country's laws apply, right?
That's called the governing law.
Okay. And where any legal action would take place.
That's a jurisdiction.
Okay, so these are all really important details when you're working with international partners.
They are. Can't overlook them.
All right, now let's untangle shipping and risk transfer. I'm still a little fuzzy on those Incoterms.
Okay, so let's say you choose CIF, that's cost, insurance, and freight, for that linen shirt shipment. That means the supplier covers those costs until the goods reach your port.
So they're responsible until it hits my dock, basically.
Pretty much.
And then what?
Then the responsibility and the risk shifts to you.
I see. So choosing the right Incoterm is really about how much risk I'm comfortable with.
And how much control you want.
Okay, and each Incoterm has its own, like, set of rules.
Yep. Got to do your research and pick the one that fits your needs.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Lastly, we have compliance with laws and regulations. Can you give me some specific examples of how this plays out in a contract with a Vietnamese supplier?
Sure. So you might include clauses that say the supplier has to comply with Vietnam's labor laws.
Okay.
Things like fair wages, safe working conditions, no child labor, all that.
Right, we want those chopsticks made ethically.
Exactly. And you could also have clauses about environmental sustainability,
Okay.
like using eco-friendly materials or limiting their carbon footprint.
So it's not just about following the law, it's about, like, our own ethical values, too.
Exactly, doing business the right way.
Okay, I like that. Now, before we move on, I'm actually curious about something you mentioned earlier.
Okay, what's that?
Building a strong relationship with the supplier. Like, how does that fit into all this contract stuff? It seems like we've been focusing so much on the legal side.
That's a great point, and it's super important.
Okay.
The contract is the foundation, but a strong relationship, that's where the magic happens.
So it's not just about, like, the paperwork.
It's about people, too.
Okay. I'm intrigued. We'll have to dive into that in the next part.
We will. We'll talk all about building those relationships with your suppliers in Vietnam.
Awesome. I can't wait. All right. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent a lot of time on those contracts.
We have.
And I'm feeling way more confident about all the legal stuff now.
Good. That's the goal.
But now I'm really curious about that human connection you mentioned. How important is that, really?
It's huge. The contract's important, sure, it sets the ground rules, but a solid relationship with your supplier, that can make all the difference. Smooth production, open communication, even handling those curveballs that pop up.
Right, because those always happen.
Always.
Okay, so give me the secrets. How do we build that kind of trust, that rapport, with a supplier that's, oceans away?
Communication is key, for sure. And I don't just mean formal emails and contracts.
Cool.
Get on those video calls, even just for a quick check-in.
Yeah.
And when you do communicate, be clear, be concise, be responsive.
So it's about building a more personal connection, showing them that they're not just, a factory to us.
Exactly. They're people.
Yeah.
And don't forget those cultural nuances we talked about.
Oh, right.
Take some time to learn about Vietnamese culture.
Okay.
Even small things like wishing them a happy Tet can go a long way.
It's those little touches showing respect.
It makes a difference.
What about when things go wrong? Like a problem arises. Does a good relationship actually help in those moments?
Oh, absolutely. When you've got that trust, those tough conversations are easier.
Yeah.
You can work together to find a solution instead of, pointing fingers.
Right. It's collaborative.
Exactly.
Like any good relationship, communication and trust, those are essential.
Couldn't agree more.
Any other tips for building those strong supplier bonds?
Visit Vietnam if you can. Nothing beats meeting face-to-face, seeing the factory firsthand.
Right. It's like experiencing it yourself, not just reading about it.
Exactly. And when you're there, be genuinely interested.
Okay.
Ask questions, listen, make them feel like valued partners.
Okay, so it's not just about inspecting and ticking boxes.
Nope, it's about building relationships.
Now, you mentioned flexibility earlier. How does that play into the contract itself?
It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
Being thorough, but also adaptable.
Tough.
You want a contract that covers the essentials, but leaves some wiggle room for those inevitable surprises.
Right, because sometimes things just happen.
They do.
So we're not talking about being vague, but building in some flexibility for those curveballs.
Exactly. Like you could include a force majeure clause
Very
that
good.
lets you adjust the delivery schedule if something crazy happens. Natural disaster, political unrest, even those container ships getting stuck again.
Oh, yeah. Got a plan for those.
It's all about being proactive.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other parting wisdom before we wrap things up?
Remember, a contract, it's not set in stone, it's a living document.
Oh, okay.
So, as your relationship with the supplier grows, your business changes, you might need to revisit things, renegotiate some terms.
So be open to those conversations.
Exactly. And if you find a supplier who's a really good fit, nurture that relationship. It can be a huge asset.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on sourcing from Vietnam now.
Glad to hear it.
Not just the legal stuff, but the importance of those relationships, too.
It's all connected.
And for our listeners, if you're looking to dive deeper into, market research, supplier evaluation, all that,
We have a whole library of resources.
check out our other deep dive episodes. And if you're ready to take the next step,
We're here to help.
you can fill out our supplier request for information form or even book a free consultation with our team.
We'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on the deep dive, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of sourcing